Ichibe Hyosube versus Genryusai Yamamoto. As far as it pertains to the world of Bleach, it is safe to say that both of these characters act as foundation stones. Characters like Senjimaru get praise for creating the captain's Hiyori, but many fans seem to forget that Yamamoto actually created the academy from which Kyoraku and Ukitake graduated. And he's in fact the founder of the 13 Court Guard Squads, an organization which exists to balance souls across the universe. Even Aizen recognizes Yamamoto as an embodiment of Soul Society's history, a description typically given to Zero Squad members. So Yamamoto was in fact one of the foundation stones of the Soul Society. But Ichibe, whom Nimaya described as a godfather of Soul Society, is more of a foundation stone than Yamamoto. He came into existence more than 1,000,000 years ago, alongside characters like the Soul King and the 5 Noble Ancestors. His existence predates even the 3 realms. It was Ichibe who witnessed the history of the Soul Society, as well as gave names to the countless phenomena that occur in the Soul Society. And having received the title of Manako Osho, the monk who calls the true name. Yamamoto served as the captain of Squad 1 as well as Commander General of the 13 Court Guard Squads, while Ichibe served as the head of the Zero Division and High Priest, the one who stands atop all Soul Reapers. Now that we have covered the introductions, let's get to the battle, Yamamoto versus Ichibe, who is stronger? Now just to be as thorough as possible, I'll go over these separate categories: intelligence, sensory abilities, Kido, Hakuda, Zanjutsu, their base swords, Shikai and Bankai, their power and speed, as well as their narrative arguments. In the category of intelligence, Yamamoto has a maxed out 100% among the Gotei 13, which means that his intellect surpasses characters like Shunsui Kyoraku and prodigies like Toshiro Hitsugaya. In the midst of battle, he is cunning enough to catch characters off guard when they think he's down, and he also had a plan to counter Aizen's Kyoka-Sugetsu. Being the head captain for over 1,000 years means that he's had tons of experiences, even 1,000 years ago when he was fighting against the Quinces, and he's been leading the entire Gotei 13, an organization consisting of multiple intelligent characters. One of the reasons why we don't see many intelligent feats from Yamamoto is because he's always been so strong that just swinging his sword around pretty much solves every problem. But Yamamoto definitely has the data to back it up. On the other hand, Ichibe has been around for more than 1,000,000 years, so he's had much more experience than Yamamoto. Furthermore, he was chosen to be a special war potential because of his wisdom. So intelligence goes to Ichibe. The sensory abilities that they employ is referred to as Reikaku. Reikaku allows them to sense spiritual phenomena such as reishi particles, spirit energy, spiritual pressure, and so on. And being so old and experienced, it is safe to say that they both excel in this area of spiritual sensing. When the Quinces fled from Yamamoto in the beginning of the 1,000-year Blood War arc, he was able to instantaneously scan the entire Serete for their presence, and he could tell that they were not there. However, none of Yamamoto's sensory feats or implications can compare to what Ichibe did in the Kanfire Oneworld novel. We have statements from Oetsu Nimaya accompanied by feats of Ichibe literally glancing into the Valley of Screams. To give some perspective on how far that actually is, he was in the Royal Palace dimension and he was able to look beyond its space-time barrier, across the Garganta and into one of the Valley of Screams, and was observing all the events taking place there with his eyes. This also means that the range of his vision extends beyond the 3 realms or the 3 main dimensions, which means that his range is more than universal. Furthermore, if you observe Nimaya's words when he said you can see all things in the world, he was referring to Ichibe looking at things in the Valley of Screams, which is inside the Garganta. The Garganta is a massive expanse of space-time beyond the 3 realms. And since the Garganta is infinite according to the Kanfire Oneworld novel, and Ichibe's vision can see all things in the world, which includes things in the Garganta, then the range of Ichibe's vision is probably infinite. So sensory ability goes to Ichibe as well. Now what about their magical abilities? Let's talk about Kido for a second. Now due to their immense spiritual powers and their prowess at manipulating Reiatsu, it's safe to say that they both excel in the art of Kido. Yamamoto can easily pull off 90s level Kido without incantation, which is a testament to his immense Kido prowess. But we've seen Ichibe whip out a form of Kido known as Secret Hado, which we've never seen in an entire series. And without incantation, this technique was able to shatter Yuha's amplified Blut and Haben. Furthermore, Ichibe's Zampato feeds into his Kido prowess as he's able to draw seals in mid-air with his brush. And in Kanfire Oneworld novel, Ichibe is able to perform powerful seals to essentially bind Yuha's corpse as a linchpin of the worlds. So once more, I have to give Kido to Ichibe. But what about Hakuda, or hand-to-hand combat? When Yamamoto lost the use of his Ryujinjaka to wonder why his sealing powers, he immediately turned to Hakuda. The character book Unmasked also declared Yamamoto as the strongest in the 4 arts among the Gotei 13, which would also include Hakuda. Furthermore, his Sokatsu was so powerful that he could shatter Wonder Wise's soul into pieces. As for Ichibe, he grabbed onto Yuha's throat and was about to crush it, and Yuha tried to use the Blut Anhaben. The Blut Anhaben is an amplified technique which raises the attack potency of your abilities, and Ichibe was able to flex his muscle and shatter the Blut Anhaben. And you might consider this a supplement to his Hakuda skills, but he's able to increase his range and power by using a technique known as Senri Sutesho to construct massive spirit appendages. Now, disregarding their lore and based on what they've actually shown in the manga, I'll give Hakuda skills to Yamamoto, but I'll give Hakuda power to Ichibe. Zanjutsu, or sword skills. 1,000 years ago, Yuha described Yamamoto as a demon or a beast with the sword, and after 1,000 years have passed, his skills have not diminished. And I guess you could argue that Ichibe doesn't use a sword, but uses a brush instead. But it's quite clear that his utility with that brush is able to counter characters who are master swordsmen like Yuha. So while I would say Yamamoto has the Zanjutsu because he uses a sword and that's his specialty, Ichibe is still capable of parrying people in that same tier of skill. Now let's compare their base Zampato, and I'm pretty sure Ichibe wins in this regard because while Yamamoto has a powerful base katana, Ichibe's base Zampato already has a pretty broken ability. Because of Ichibe's power over names, his base Zampato is able to cut through names. And whenever he cuts through names, he can basically reduce the power of the person that he cuts. For example, when he hit Yuha's arm with his brush, he was able to cut through the name of Yuha's arm, reducing it to AR, essentially reducing its power overall. With that said, his arm then possessed half the power it once had. Next up, there's Shikai. Yamamoto's Shikai was so powerful that Ukitake described it as having transcendent spiritual pressure. Now this is not the same transcendence as Ichigo and Aizen's, but he's basically saying the Shikai's power is so incredible that it hovers above the power of all the Shikai in the Gotei 13. Its heat was so incredible that it scorches the heavens and consumes the clouds, rendering everything before it into ashes. The oldest and greatest of all the Zanpakuto in the Gotei 13 with the most terrible spiritual power. Aizen described his Ryujinjaka as the ultimate Zanpakuto, a power which he himself did not want to face. As such, he went to great lengths to create and modify the Rancor just to seal away Yamamoto's Shikai. He's able to use powerful fire-based techniques such as Ennetsu Jigoku, which turns everything to ashes and vaporizes souls. With all that said, it's fair to say that Yamamoto's Shikai is absolutely no joke. Ichibe's Shikai is known as Ichimonji, and its power grants him dominion over all the black in the world. He's not using Reiatsu to attack the opponent, he's literally using black itself, because black itself becomes his power. And we could see him draw black from outside the Sedete, even though he was in Royal Palace being a different dimension. When Yuha tried to steal Ichibe's powers, he simply showed massive resistance to power stealing by reminding him that all the black in the world becomes his own, and he cannot take it from him because he simply owns it all. With the power of black, whatever he paints over loses its name and its power as a result. And this extends so far that the target also forgets the name of whatever is covered in darkness. For example, here, Yuha cannot remember the name of his sword after it has been painted over by Ichibe's Shikai, and you can see Ichibe being a complete jerk in the background. Now you might be tempted to say that Yamamoto's Shikai flames would just evaporate Ichibe's ink, and while they do cause immense physical damage, I don't think that's the case, because Ichibe's ink is able to function on a more fundamental scale. It's able to affect your concept, your name, essentially something that is abstract and not even physical. So because it's black, it's able to function on a more fundamental, conceptual or metaphysical scale, I don't think the flames of Ryujinjaka Shikai would just evaporate it. Now before I talk about their bankais, I'd like to address speed and power. Since Yamamoto was described as the strongest in the 4 arts, then his speed should also scale to the top of the Gotei 13, and his power was described in the databook to be so immense that even with one arm, he was still above all the other captains. However, in this scenario, I will use Yamamoto with both arms, just to be fair. And we know that Shinigami have like vents in their wrists, so having both arms should allow him to release more power. Furthermore, his Zanjutsu will be stronger since he can now use things like Kendo again. And there's one aspect of his power which wouldn't necessarily change. His Zanpakuto power would pretty much be the same thing. because while one arm is removed, it doesn't necessarily take away from its inherent Zampato power. Now we do know that Yuha was able to steal Yamamoto's Bankai as well as control it, so it's safe to say that Yuha scales Yamamoto's Bankai, as he can also take the power, contain it, and utilize it. Furthermore, this is the same Bankai that was so powerful that it was going to burn Soul Society and Yamamoto himself down to the ground, meaning that taking it and controlling it does scale Yuha to Yamamoto. Furthermore, Kubo dedicated an entire chapter just to explain that all the Stormwatchers who died, their souls and powers returned to Yuha. Additionally, all those who came in contact with Yuha's soul, whether directly or via touching any of the Stormwatchers or fighting them, and if they died permanently, their souls also returned to Yuha. So any Stormwatcher that died permanently, their souls have gone back to Yuha. And any Shinigami who came in contact with Yuha by fighting him and they died permanently, their souls and powers also returned to Yuha. Additionally, any Soul Reaper who came in contact with any of the Stormwatchers and died permanently, their souls and power also returned to Yuha. Furthermore, this was also shown on panel that when Master Masculine was defeated by Renji Abarai, that his and James's soul embodied as one returned to Yuha. You can literally see Yuha talking to their soul as it returned to him. So in addition to stealing Yamamoto's Bankai, hence proving that he scales Yamamoto, Yuha would have also absorbed Yamamoto's soul, and on top of that he'd have also absorbed characters like Royd, as well as any other Stormwatcher who died, any other Quincy who died, or any other Shinigami who died. All their souls and powers would have gone back to Yuha. And Yamamoto being in hell in the Bleach one-shot would not contradict this, because it simply means that his soul was relinquished upon Yuha's defeat. And my reason for explaining that lore is because this was the amped up version of Yuha who went to fight Ichibe. And since Ichibe is fighting a stronger version of Yuha, it is safe to say that Ichibe has the advantage in overall power. Furthermore, we can see Ichibe literally overpower Yuha on more than one occasions. He's able to match his speed and striking force through his sword. He was also able to cut through his name, blacken his name and power, and send him flying. And when Yuha tried to use massive concentrated reishi constructs against Ichibe, he literally smashed them between his palms. Yuha also tried to use Blut and Haben against Ichibe, and for those who don't know, Blut techniques either drastically amp your defense or your offensive power. Even Ichigo's mom, Masaki, had tremendous Blut vein defense, and she's not on Yuha's level. And yet when Yuha tried to use Blut and Haben against Ichibe, he simply smashed through it by just flexing his muscles. He literally sent the concentrated power of the Blut and Haben back into Yuha, essentially causing his face to rupture. Ichibe is therefore consistently overpowering this amped Yuha, so it's safe to say that Ichibe is generally above Yamamoto's level. Now let's see if their Bankais would actually change anything. Now Yamamoto would most likely have to start the battle off in Bankai, because if he starts in base, Ichibe would most likely slice through his name, and if he starts in Shikai, Ichibe would most likely blacken his power and basically reduce it. Then Ichibe could use his own Bankai, the Shinuchi Shirafude Ichimonji, to basically rewrite Yamamoto's name, attributing to him a different power, a different existence. Yamamoto's Bankai is so tremendously powerful that his spirit energy around him essentially manifests like flames. And even though they look like flames, they're not actually flames because they burn at 15 million degrees Celsius, which is essentially the temperature of the sun's core. And that amount of heat cannot manifest as flames. And although this Bankai's power is so tremendous that it could dry up all the water across Soul Society over time, I don't think this would actually dry up the ink that Ichibe uses. As I explained before, it functions on a more conceptual, metaphysical scale. This technique, which wraps Yamamoto in a fiery cloak, is called Zanka no Tachi West. And although the heat coming off of it is affecting the entire Soul Society and burning it down and drying up all the water, it should be noted that that is not Yamamoto's true power, that's just his presence. And although Zanka no Tachi South is such a tremendous power and is able to raise the dead and was able to hold back Royd, it should be noted that this wouldn't really work on Ichibe, because Ichibe can construct massive spirit appendages to defend himself or go in the offensive over a large scale. Plus he's also able to physically smash through Yuha's enhanced constructs. The only technique which I think could potentially work is Zanka no Tachi East, because this ability essentially traps all of the fire into the edge of the sword and is able to erase the existence of whatever it touches. But Ichibe definitely has the sensory prowess to essentially understand the danger of the sword. Furthermore, he also scales to a stronger version of Yuha in terms of physical stats, so I don't think it would actually hit him. And if we combine those stats with Ichibe's immense wisdom, and all the weird things he can do, he can definitely get around this technique. And while Genryusai can erase existence, Ichibe is able to affect him conceptually by painting over his name and recreating it with his Bankai. Ichibe also possesses the Futen Taisatsuryo. To understand the power of this ability, Yuha was able to break off the characters of Ichibe's Bankai, and after seeing this, Ichibe still thought that the Futen Taisatsuryo would be enough to erase Yuha from existence completely, essentially deleting him from the cycle of reincarnation, his entire body, physically as well. So I think Ichibe also possesses a greater version of existence erasure. Narratively speaking, Yamamoto was the strongest in the Gotei 13 for a millennia because he was simply unsurpassed. Furthermore, he was seen as a monster with ridiculous spiritual power who sits on the outskirts of common sense. But his lore and feats more so point towards him being superior to the captains of the Gotei 13. On the other hand, Ichibe is implied to be narratively superior, as you can see that he has the power over names, which is something that governs even Yamamoto's powers. He's recognized as a Manako Osho by the Soul King himself directly. Furthermore, there's also the fact that Ichibe's powers is stated in the databook to function like a creator, as in he's seen as some sort of godly being from the ancient world. Within the story's own narrative, you can see that he's fighting against a stronger version of Yuha, and he's also seen as the last line of defense before Yuha gets to the Soul King. Furthermore, he's seen as the leader of the Zero Squad, the same squad who at the time was stated to be superior to the entire Gotei 13, knowing that Yamamoto is the main striking force of the Gotei 13 at that time, and Ichibe was the main striking force of the Zero Division. He seemed to be somewhat superior in that sense. Furthermore, we also know that Yuha considers Ichibe to be the one who sits atop all of the Soul Reapers. Additionally, he controls the power of Black, which is something he can draw from separate dimensions, something he can draw across time itself from even the future, so his power is seen as something more elemental to the universe itself. Additionally, he's also seen as the one who oversees the entire universe, as he has the power to glance across the cosmos and sense things in separate dimensions, something beyond even Yamamoto's own powers. So again, he seems to be narratively implied to be above Yamamoto in many regards. So in conclusion, Ichibe versus Yamamoto, I believe Ichibe wins. The godfather of Soul Society and the monk who calls the true names, Ichibe Yosube. Thank you all for watching. This took a lot of effort to make, so be sure to like and subscribe, and let me know what you think in the comment section. Cheers.